And we're joined by we're joined by by Dr. Nouman Abu Isa, a member of the Democratic Party, to discuss the latest developments and the stakes as the campaigns make their final push. Dr. Nouman, Harris' campaign has been emphasizing social issues, especially abortion rights, to galvanize support. Her recent rally in Houston, where she was joined by prominent figures like Beyoncé, aimed at rallying women voters. How effective do you think this strategy is in reaching undecided voters or energizing the base in the final days?
Hello to all. First, I think women have been active supporters of Kamala Harris. They have been outraged about the recent restrictions on abortion laws in their states and in the United States in general, especially after Donald Trump appointed three social justices who overturned Roe versus Wade, and that took away the federal right to abortion. And the women feel that they have been violated. This is a decision between them and their doctors, and there is no room for the government to make those decisions. And Kamala Harris is capitalizing on the outrage of those women who are going to go to the voting places in droves, in large numbers. And it's clear that her margin with women is way above her opponent, Donald Trump. It's more than 60% of the women will be voting for her, and she is concentrating on that vote to tip her over the half point to win the presidency in the states which matter, basically those swing states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
Yes. Dr. Abaisa, while younger voters continue to lean towards Harris, there is concerns about her declining support among the Latino voters, a group Trump seems to be gaining ground with. What factors might be contributing to this shift, and how can Harris address it before Election Day?
Yeah, the economy has been a big issue for most Americans, including minorities, and she is trying to address the inflation issue and also the help to the people who are suffering the most, the poor, including minorities like Latinos. She's been talking about child credit and also assistance to housing, like buying a first house. And those are the issues she's trying to explain to her audiences, that she feels their pain. She has been a poor person herself. She grew up with a single mother. She worked at McDonald's herself when she was young, and she knows the suffering of the poor Americans, and she is continuing to work with the current administration, and she has her own plans also for the next administration to satisfy the needs of those immigrants. Those immigrants should not be voting for Donald Trump because he wants to deport some of them. He wants to deport all illegal immigrants from the United States, even those who are working and have been born in this country. There are people, about 10 million people in the United States who are citizen in full capacity, but they don't have the paper to be residents in the United States. And she's trying to capitalize on those immigrants to try to gain back their support.
Mm. Now we're joined by Katie Labutin, a Republican Party advisor, along with Dr. Nouman Abu Isa. And Ms. Katie, if I may ask you, the latest polls show a neck-and-neck race between Trump and Harris, even in states that were previously leaning Democratic. What do you think is driving this surge in support for Trump, especially in key battlegrounds like Pennsylvania and Arizona?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on. I do want to caution that with the polls, everything right now is neck to neck, and this is very much a state-by-state election, so it is a little bit dangerous to look at it from a national perspective. That said, voters are finally getting to learn who Kamala Harris is. They're seeing what she's going to bring to the table if she's elected next month. They're seeing who her personality is. The fact that she's spending more time attacking the former president and having a difficult time separating herself from the Biden administration, saying that her administration would basically be a continuation of President Biden's administration. The message that she's giving is not assuaging voters' concerns that she's going to be any different from the status quo. And so voters who are still on the fence are more likely to go with the change that they know rather than the change they're unsure of. And that's why there's been some movement in the direction of the former president.
Right. If I may ask you here, Trump has made some bold proposals recently, such as eliminating income taxes in favor of tariffs. These were one of the bold announcements. How do you see this resonating with voters, particularly in economically struggling states like Michigan?
So it's one thing to come forth with these claims, and on the surface, it sounds like a great policy proposal to charge foreign nations to boost our economy. The United States Constitution gives the power of raising revenue for the federal government to Congress. So basically, this would be up to Congress, and if there's a Republican Congress elected in November, they would have the ability to potentially put these and then we as Republicans, we believe in low taxes, low regulation, keeping the government as small as possible so that way it does what it needs to do. It doesn't have a surplus of revenue in its coffers. And so whether it's dealing with lower taxes, sales tax, or dealing with sales taxes or tariffs, the whole concept is just to reduce the tax burden on Americans, because the biggest issue right now is the economy. We're struggling. A lot of people in the middle class are still struggling to make ends meet. And so whatever we can do to make it easier for people to have a little bit of extra cash in their bank accounts at the end of the day, that's what's going to drive the message home at the end of the day. And that's what's going to win the election for the former president.
Well, Dr. Abais, tensions are high as the rhetoric from both sides intensifies. Now, Harris recently described Trump as a danger and threat to America. Do you think this kind of language helps to energize voters, or could it alienate those looking for a more positive messages?
Most voters would like to see more positive. They are sensitive to their livelihood, and they know what matters to them most, and they don't really care about name calling or putting down the other side. They are looking for real policies which affect them. Like we talk about the social policies of Kamala Harris, who are protective of women and of immigrants, and those are real issues to real people. People don't care about like you mentioned, a name calling or fight between former president and vice president, and those are unfortunate, but it's part of the political scene here. It's very acute competition between the two parties and the two persons, and those two persons are working 24/7 these days, just a week and a couple days before the election, and they are putting all their efforts toward the end date, and they are at the edge, and sometimes they get out of control, and they might say a few things like you mentioned. But the voters are very concerned about the future of this country. They are looking for policies which affect this country in a positive way. I mean, the Republicans like small governments, but we know that the deficit has been skyrocketing during the Trump administration, and there is more spending than there is revenues in this country, and that is a concern for most Americans.
Right. Ms. Katie, foreign interference. And foreign interference has again become a topic of concern, with reports of Chinese hackers targeting both campaigns. How might this affect voters' confidence in the election process, and what measures should be taken to ensure election integrity?
So I think as far as the foreign interference aspect of it, that goes to more of a global level and something that, whether we're talking elections or global Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 50 companies, that's something that just Americans and people in general have to just at the data privacy issue. As far as election security, the secretaries of states and the government bodies responsible for election administration in each of the 50 states and the District of Columbia and the territories have put into place various systems that are focused on making sure that we have fair and free elections in all of our places, that it's easy and that your ballot is protected. We have safe measures in place. We have, and things like voter ID. A lot of times when you vote absentee, you have to have your ballot signed by a witness to ensure that you vote. And so just making sure that we follow through with these things. The number of cases of election interference are very small. They do happen, but it's on such a small scale that it doesn't affect the election the way it's believed to have affected the election in recent years.
Right. Dr. Abu Isa, if I may here ask you, about what could be the decisive factors in these upcoming very few days, so as to put voters or change the polls into the direction of any of the two candidates?
Yeah, we have what we call voters get out the vote, basically trying to get out the Democratic voters to go to the polls and cast their ballots. Many Americans do not vote, and the Democratic Party is working hard to get out the vote by knocking on doors, reminding people by phone calls to start voting. Some of the states are the voting is open right now. Another important factor is really what's happening in the wars in the world, in the Middle East specifically, and that is impacting the vote of the Arab Americans and Muslim Americans. And Kamala Harris has been trying.
Right, very much indeed. I got your point here. Unfortunately, our time is out, and that was Katie Labutin and Dr. Nouman Abu Isa. Thank you so much for your insights. And as election day approach, the race remains highly competitive, with both candidates working tirelessly to sway undecided voters and secure the electoral votes needed to win.